What is up, everybody? My name is Ross, and if you're new here, I kind of dabble in photography, Photoshop, Lightroom, etc. And today I've got some exciting news. I was approached by a company, a application or plugin rather, called Dehancer, and they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we would like you to try our product. In return, just make a video and we'll give your subscribers 10% off said product." So I'm like, okay, well, what's the catch? Do you need to review anything, etc.? They're like, no, completely do whatever you want. We don't have to see it. We want an unbiased opinion. So I'm going to put that disclaimer out there. Obviously, they have given me this product for 30 days, just 30 days to try it out, just so I can make a video on it. And I'm going to go over that. I'm going to go over the pros and cons. I've been using it, not daily, but I've been using it. I've tried to incorporate it into my workflow, and we'll talk about that later because that is one of the sticking points for me. But yeah, we'll get into it, and I'll go over the pros, the cons, how it works for me, how it may work for you, why you would want to use this in the first place, and just break down everything from cost to, like I said, workflow, etc. So if you want the nitty gritty, we'll go through it up front here once we jump in the computer, so you don't have to stick through the whole thing. I'll try to put the timestamps below as I usually do. What am I forgetting? Oh, and I'll give you the promo code as well at the end to save 10% if you choose to go with this product / plugin. Let's just hop into the computer and go over why you might want this. I'm in Lightroom here. I got my catalog pulled up. Here is the first comparison. This is the first photo I tried it out on, and it might not look that different before we get into the actual plugin itself. Once again, it's Dehancer. Did I say that yet? It's Dehancer is the name of the plugin. So as you can see here on the left, I have a photo of two of my kids, two of the three, and this is with the plugin with some adjustments I've applied in Dehancer to make it look more like a film photograph. And over here on the right is my original digital edit. So very quickly, let's go over why you might want to use a product like this. I don't know if you are a film shooter like I am, but I really enjoy the process of shooting film. Not just the process, the different film stocks you can choose from. How you get the aesthetic of film is not very easily achievable in the digital workspace. And having said that, since the pandemic, film prices and film processing has shot through the roof. I still have a fridge full of film that I just haven't touched or shot with because I'm deterred to shoot it because of those prices. Just to get it processed alone is going to cost, I think, $10 a roll, which adds up. So why would you want this? Well, you can emulate that kind of film aesthetic with your digital shots, and it's not going to cost you anything aside from you buying the product. But let's get into it. So I'm going to just zoom in because what I think Dehancer does really well is 2 or 3 things that is very hard to achieve in the current tools that I have. Mainly being Lightroom, because I like to just stick in Lightroom. So I'm going to zoom in here. The first 2 things I want to point out, first 3 things, and then we'll get into the actual plugin itself, Dehancer. 3 things I think it does well. So if you were sticking around for like what it does well and what doesn't do well, I'll just nail it in the butt right here. I think it does film grain excellent. I think it does do the film emulations pretty well. And we'll get into that in a second. I say pretty well because you'll see they might seem a little filterly, but I'll get into like why it's not really that case. And then the third and fourth reasons why what I think does really well is these things called halation and bloom. If you're not familiar with that, we're going to go into it pretty in depth when we get into the plugin. But those are things that are very characteristic of film, and I haven't seen anything else, especially within the Adobe product line, that offers some sort of control over that. And you have full control over all those things I just mentioned in Dehancer Pro. So I'm just going to like kind of zoom around here, and you can this is what I'm talking about here. This halation, this kind of reddish glow, and that's also with bloom. You can't get that easily. Right here is really good. You can see how it's blooming right around our subject here. You can't get that in camera digitally. There are some filters that kind of try to mimic it, but you can't get it unless you use this plugin, in my opinion. Down here, you can see how it's kind of blooming off those highlights and the halations off the highlights. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the product. Let's see. Let's find an image. This image, I think, is a good candidate. So let me get out of this. I'm not going to go over how to install it. They have a great how-to when you get the product. There's a PDF, how to install it, where to install it. They also have kind of their recommended settings before you jump into here. But because I'm a rule breaker and I just want to do my own thing, I've just been playing with this with all the edits I've already done in some of my photos here. So like all these photos that I'm showing you today are already edited in Lightroom, disregarding what Dehancer is saying like are the optimal settings. And I'm just going to right click because I have this plugin installed, go to edit in and edit in Dehancer Lightroom plugin. And I always edit a copy because that's just how I roll. I don't want to destroy my original edit. So now I'll have 2 copies of it essentially. So what it's doing up here, you can see in the upper left, it's preparing this file for editing. It does take a little bit. And this is my one, it's not really a complaint. Obviously it went pretty quick there. One of my complaints is it doesn't really fit into my workflow. And we'll get into this once again a little bit later, or I can just get into it now, I guess. And if you've seen my other videos, I really stress importing on the iPad or iPhone because I can start editing right away and it's in the cloud. Then I pull all those edits down and it gets backed up in my catalog on my desktop on my external hard drive. The way this plugin works is it is a plugin for Lightroom and for Photoshop. So that would mean I would have to hop on a computer and then basically finish my photo with this aesthetic approach. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just not currently how I operate to get photo edits turned around quickly. So that's my one sticking point. The second sticking point, and I will be honest, is I believe it's $200. Now that is a chunk of change, but as I just said at the beginning, if you are shooting film and you want that film aesthetic, that's honestly, let's see, probably, if you actually factor in the film costs and everything, that's probably like 10 rolls of film. So it's actually kind of a bargain in that sense. But if you're just trying to apply this to your digital workflow, I would look at that. I would look at the price. Once again, if you use the promo code Second Crop, you will save 10%. I think you really need to look at is it going to work for your pocketbook and is it going to work for your workflow? Having said all that, they do offer, I think it is like a 30-day trial period. So you can test it out at least on some of your photos. And if it doesn't work for you, then we're done here. And if it does work for you, yeah, just go get it. I think what it does, I'm going to go over here on the right side quick. I'm going to collapse all these toolbars because what it does do, which I do like, is it keeps your last applied settings. But I'm going to uncheck all these just so I don't have anything started. And then you're basically met with a film profile and profiles on the left-hand side here. Basically, those are the film stocks back in the day, what we'd call them, or even today still. And they have, I think it's upwards of over 60 now in here, which is fantastic, actually. These are what I would call like the starting points, kind of like a little filterly, but with this little push-pull thing right here, and this isn't just exposure compensation. This is a pushing and pulling of basically when you develop your film, you either push or pull your film development process. So sometimes it would add contrast or desaturate or affect the colors, and they've had this all built in. So they're not filters, they're kind of like filters on steroids, but that's the starting point. And then up here on the right, you have some presets, and you can see I've already kind of played with this, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But here's a preset I did earlier. It doesn't work for this image, but I'll show you why it worked on this Aaron Rodgers image a little bit later. And then I did a Stranger Things, which just adds a lot of grain and etc. And once again, I don't think it works for this. So we're going to go back to the profile. And the way you create your presets is you go through everything that I'm going to show you here, and then you just go to this little plus icon, and then you name it, and then you're on your way. But we're going to go back to the profiles, and we're going to click off all these once again, because what you need to start with is your actual film stock. Now they have plenty. If you go up here to this first drop down, you can basically filter them by color negative, motion picture, color positive, black and white, instant, exotic, and cross. I'll let you guys play with that. What I've been drawn to are some of the black and whites in the motion picture. So for this one, I'm just going to grab the motion picture, and I'm just clicking around to see like what actually complements this. And I think actually right off the bat is the Kodak Vision 350D. And I don't know if you guys can see that. Up here in the upper right, you can check off the preview on and off. And instantly, one thing that I've always hated or disliked strongly about digital, the greens, man. There's certain colors that digital I don't think handle well, and greens are one of them. So I'm going to start with this as my starting point. And as you can see, this push-pull is to -2, which may have pulled some contrast out. So I'm going to just mess with this slider and show you what happens. So a negative, when you push and pull this negative, it's going to desaturate. And if you push it overexposed or whatever, it's going to kind of saturate it. So it's not, I'm telling you, it's not just an exposure. They've really thought and put some thought into how the films react to their development process, which is actually kind of cool because that's what we're doing here. We're developing a photo. I'm going to leave that just neutral, kind of right around the middle. If you double click, it'll reset it. Now over here, we're going to get into the magic. I'm going to check this source. I'm going to reset these. You can either double click those or just hit the reset button up here. So now this is where we get our temperature control, tint control, and then the defringe and the defringe radius. This isn't your defringe, I don't think, like in Lightroom, where it's going to get rid of the fringing. Quite honestly, I would have to dig into the literature of what this does. But what you can play with here is the temperature of your image. And the other thing we can do is we can go to a 1-to-1. So we zoom into 100%. And the one thing I want to look at is how it's affecting our whites here, because I don't want it to get blue and I don't want it to get orange because I'm already kind of orange. I want it just neutral. And obviously the tint is going to push it either green or magenta. We're going to kind of probably keep it right there. Now, the next one is expand. This is pretty much going to set your contrast, the black point and the white point of your image. I'm going to reset these and you'll see what I mean. If I pull this to the left, you're going to get that, how do I say this? Kind of like a desaturated or those lifted blacks. So you really don't have like an actual black point. And the more you go to the right, it's going to creep in that black point. So more things are black versus less things are black. I want a little bit, I'm going to raise that black point just so it deepens our blacks a little bit. And then same with the white point. You can play with this. You can blow it completely out. I want it a little brighter, but not too much. So once again, the cool thing about this is you have complete control over everything, right? I'm going to try to breeze through this so that we can get going here. The print. So this is actually really cool. Part of film photography is when you actually go to print it, you get paper choices and paper stocks and how that is going to affect your print too. So here they have a few built in. They have the glossy paper, 2383, which is kind of like, I think, the industry standard. They have a Fujifilm, which for this one, actually, one thing Fuji does do well that I've always appreciated with their film stocks and even their film or digital cameras, greens. So I'm going to leave it on this, the Fujifilm. And here you have a target white. So once again, this kind of sets the white point, but this I think is more of the target white of the paper. So you can push this more kind of a yellowish or bluish. I'm not sure where I want. I think I want it a little warmer actually. And then here's where you would play with the exposure once again. I would try to not mess with these so much. Once again, I would do your original edits, and then when you get in here, it's kind of to flavor what kind of colors you want to pop and what kind of aesthetic you're going for. I wouldn't mess with, if you're coming in here to mess with exposure, this is the wrong time to do it. And then tonal contrast as well. You can kind of play with that as you see fit. Color density is another good one. This isn't necessarily saturation. What I want you to look at, we're going to zoom in on his face. This is how dense these colors get. So we can pull it out or we can push it in. So either you have more or less. What is going on here? Sorry, I'm blowing up. All right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put this on Do Not Disturb. I'm on my lunch break. We're talking color density here. You're not going to see much in the terms of the greens here, but what you're going to see is the orange, yellows, and reds really come out. So once again, this is to flavor. I don't want it to be overdone in his face, but that's looking pretty good. And then saturation, once again, I wouldn't necessarily play with saturation here unless you're going for the black and white vibes. That should probably be done in your original edit. Once again, this is just my take on this. And Dehancer actually has their kind of, like I said, best practices that ships along when you buy the actual product, or even when you do the free trial. I think it's in that PDF literature. I'm just going to leave that as is. And just with these first three, source, expand, and print, here's what we've got so far. This is something that I would actually go out the door with right here, but we're not even done. We're about halfway. So next we have color head. What is color head? I believe that is once you actually go to print once again. So you've picked your paper. Now this is how much colors you would push or pull in. So you have a yellow blue slider, a magenta green slider, and a cyan red slider. I'm going to reset these and you're going to see what happens. Obviously it gets more yellow, it gets more blue. So this is where you can kind of, I think what you'd see this in Lightroom as color grading, kind of pushing and pulling colors in that way. Once again, I wouldn't do too much here. This is, well, maybe a little bit here. This is kind of doing some cool things with the green. But it will greatly affect your image. I'm just making kind of small adjustments here. If I turn that off and turn that back on, it's very hard to tell, but it is, even down here, they kind of give a nice histogram of where your colors and exposure is falling. You can turn that off up here to get a little bit more screen real estate, or turn it back on. But I kind of like where that's at with color head. I'm going to now jump into where I think this really shines and where you don't have control over this in the traditional tools that at least I currently use. So we got film grain, halation, bloom, and even vignette. I actually think the vignette is better in here than it is in Lightroom. I'm going to start with film grain. This is something I don't usually do in Lightroom, right? Usually I'm trying to get the noise out of my images. But here, this is too much. I can already tell, but we have control over size, amount, resolution, shadows, midtones, highlights, and colors. This is cool because you can push in how much grain you want into the shadows, the midtones, or highlights. And they even have a color slider here too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this down just a little bit. I think I've had pretty good success in like the 5 to 7 range. The resolution, I think, really deals with how much it's going to deteriorate or not deteriorate your image. I'm actually going to push the amount up a little bit. I'm just going to leave it at that because I want to keep going here. But if I zoom back in, if I turn this on and off, I want to be by his face because that's what we're focused on here. You can see no grain, no film grain. And if I add, it almost adds kind of what it's saying over here, resolution, but it's kind of, I think it's a deception thing. It adds that grain, and this grain is actually beautiful compared to what you can get in Lightroom. So I'm going to move on to halation. Now this is what I think is pretty powerful. I'm going to reset this just so we can see, and I'm going to zoom out. The first thing I'm going to point out here is this little checkbox for mask mode. This is going to show you basically what is being halated, if that makes sense. Is that even the proper nomenclature here? But I'm going to turn this up so we can see what's going on. And it's kind of hard to see, but if I zoom in here, this is his head right there. So I can turn mask off. You can see what's happening here. It's creating, he's got a nice bald head, and it's causing these highlights, a hot highlight, if you will, on his head. What the halation does, I think, is it tries to find those brightest whites and just kind of bloom a halation around them. I'm not saying it's perfect. What I wish I could see in here is, this is a mask mode, right? It's just going to show you what I want to be able to see is, or be able to do is be able to paint on where I have those halations. But I'll show you that when we get into Photoshop, because you can easily do that with masking. But what I'm going to do here, just so we can see what's going on, I'm going to zoom out for a second. Yeah, local diffusion is basically going to make those objects glow. And once again, you can play with this how you want. This is why I would want a little bit more control, at least with the Lightroom plugin. I want to be able to paint on where these halations are. And that's currently, I don't even think they have plans to add that. But if they're listening, I think that would be a cool thing to just be able to paint on just the halations so that I don't have to do a round trip to Dehancer twice. Because the way I would do that is I would do all my initial edits once, and then I'd open another copy and just play with the halation that way. Probably in Photoshop, though, at that point. So we're going to turn down the amplify. We don't need that local diffusion up so high. The smoothness, yes. The hue, you can even change kind of the color of it. Mostly it's like a yellowish, orangish red. And then you have a blue compensation too. I'm going to just turn this up so we can see what's going on. So the blue compensation, what are we doing here? I think it's still kind of just playing with the actual orangeness / yellowness of the color. We can turn on the impact. Let's turn this on and off to see what we're doing here. So even this alone, this looks like a film shot to me. We got some characteristics. 1, the color. 2, the grain. And then this halation. But halation isn't without bloom. So that's the next thing here. And even just turning that on, I'm not going to make any adjustments, but I'm going to show you what you can adjust. Highlights, source limiter, details, etc. The amplify, once again, how much or how little. And obviously you can overdo this and it can get too much very quick. So you're going to play with that as you see fit. And then finally, we got vignette here. Let me turn this on. What were our last settings? That might be a bit much. What I like to do is I turn the feather down to see where this actual vignette circle is and then go from there. The aspect ratio just shows how much of a circle or how much oval you have here. And then the exposure obviously is how much it's dipping. We're going to just bump that up and then maybe do something like this. All right, so I am just going to apply these edits. I'm going to show you what it does round trip. Here is the before and here's the after. It's actually a bit heavy. I'm going to go back to this film grain or halation. Turn this down and turn this down. I'm going to hit OK. So what it's going to do is it's going to round trip that back to Lightroom, and it's going to have a copy. It's going to have your original edits, and then it's going to have this. As you can see, it says Edit TIFF up here, and they should be right next to each other. So we can go back and forth between the two. Here's my advice. I'd get the trial version and just play with it because, like I said, the 2 sticking points are going to be how you incorporate it into your workflow and the price. I'm trying to help you out with the price. I can get you 10% off. Like I said, second crop is the promo code. So that's how it is in Lightroom. And then in Photoshop, it's very similar. I'm going to just open this up. I'm going to show you kind of a before and after of a few that I played with, and you saw those presets here. So this is the original photo. I just pulled a web photo of the patron saint of Sunday touchdowns, Aaron Rodgers here, of the Green Bay Packers. Go Pack Go. And I applied just some quick settings. And honestly, once again, this is clearly a digital shot. If we just do a quick Dehancer round trip, this is what you can get. And I think it looks very cinematic, very filmic. It looks like film. I added a little halation here, some bloom. You can see some grain in there. If I zoom in, obviously the image is from web, so the quality isn't there. But it's really cool. Just a few quick things in Dehancer and you get that. So then I was thinking, you know, my background was actually graphic design. Is there any way that you could finish an image or an illustration with these same techniques? Because obviously Dehancer is made for photos and photography. They actually, one thing I would look into is they do have a plugin for video producers, like video content, I think for DaVinci, etc. They have the kind of pro version and light version. The light version is 200 as well. I don't know if my promo code works on there. That is something I would highly look into because that is more incorporated into your workflow, because in DaVinci, everything is right there. So when you're finishing your color grade and everything, boom, it's right there. Once again, for me, this doesn't quite incorporate into my current workflow. Now, having said that, if there are certain images that I want to pump up or make it look like it was shot on film, I would definitely do that. Is it worth $200? That's going to be for you to decide. I'm not going to push that on you. I'm just trying to show you what we can do here. So anyways, going back, I'm graphic design. That's my major that I graduated with. So I'm like, how could we do this with posters? So once again, I just went to the web and I pulled a Stranger Things poster from the web, not high quality at all. This is what it started as, a very clean, very cool aesthetic. And then this is what I did when I just ran it through Dehancer. Obviously, I'm hard on the noise here, but I think it actually pumped up the contrast too, the colors, the bloom, the halation. It's hard to see in here, but we did add some. This is so cool because at least I haven't figured out how to do it in Photoshop. There probably is a way, but this tool takes all the guesswork out instantly. So the cool thing about the Photoshop one, I'm going to start this over. I'm going to Command J to create a copy. So once you install it, it's going to be in your filters. You're going to go filter all the way down to Dehancer Film. What I'm going to say is cool about the Photoshop one is I'm going to just, that's the one that we did before. This is the Aaron Rodgers one. Let's just do motion picture. Going to grab that. And then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just go into my halation. And I'm going to show you why I like it. Because we're in Photoshop, we have all the features of Photoshop, meaning we can mask things. So once again, if I amplify this, global diffusion, this is actually pretty good. Local diffusion, okay, that might be too much. I want it to be smooth. I'm just gonna hit OK on this. The reason why I did this so obnoxious is not for the people, but for the title down here. So if I only want this on the title, let's say I'm actually gonna use the original edit that I did, so this one, but I want the title to just have a little bit more glow, I'm going to just create an inverted mask by holding Option or Alt on the PC and hitting the mask button, grabbing my brush tool, grabbing white so I can just basically show what's in that mask or show what was originally there, and I can just mask this halation in. So that's how I would use it if I wanted to like kind of do spot treatments. I wish there was something built into Dehancer where you could paint certain aesthetics in, especially halation, especially bloom. That's a little limiting. Now, having said that, I don't know if this completely incorporates into my workflow. Like I said, and I've said it 3 or 4 times already, and I'll say it again. It's only going to be for certain images. Let's actually go back to Lightroom because I had some night photos I wanted to play with too. Let's go into library. So I have some night shots. I even did this. The cool thing with this is we can do it with our drone photography because I'm big into drone. This is my original panel edit of this Cheese Days photo over Monroe, Wisconsin. Beautiful sunset popped out. Took 3 shots, stitched them together. That's what I got. Now, when I ran it through Dehancer, I got this cool looking film shot. And if I compare these, if it's going to let me. So now we have the original edit on the left. On the right is the film edit. One thing I think it does really well is colors, is aesthetic, is that film grain, even the bloom. It's hard to see in here because I didn't want to overdo it. Maybe down here in this guy. You're not going to get this with your drone shots. Your drone shots are going to be very clean, very digital, very sterile in that sense. And one thing that Dehancer allows us to do is add that characteristic to our shots. So that's one thing I did play with. The other thing I wanted to play with was just night shots in general. All right, here we go. So once again, on the left, we have the original edit. So it was what I had out of camera with my edits. And then on the right here is the edit from Dehancer. One thing you'll know, once again, the colors. The color shift is very easy. it's not just a preset. It's not just a one-click thing. You get to play with the sliders and everything. I do think it does that well. I was probably heavy-handed on this noise because it was already shot at 8,000 ISO, so there was digital noise in there. But just the colors, see, I remember this in person as being more blue than it is purple. That's another thing. In digital, for whatever reason, I just don't think digital picks up the colors accurately. Now, yes, white balance factors into that, etc. But with Dehancer, you have a little bit more leeway, I think, to play with colors, to play with the film grain, and to play with halation. That's pretty much all I have. I think the takeaways are, does it work for your workflow? Can you fork out $200, or in this case, $180, because with second crop, you'll get 10% off. But more importantly, if you're into video, I would check out the video portion of this, or I don't have a video portion, but the video plugin of this, because I think it does everything that this does. I didn't have an opportunity to test that out. They wanted me to test out the photo plugins here, but I think that is going to incorporate into your workflow. I do think it's worth the price of $200, and I think that is probably the best bargain that I can pitch to you. But go download the free trial, test it out, see if it works for your workflow. My takeaway is, not quite. I'll hand select some photos, maybe my drone shots I'll incorporate it with, but it's going to be on a use or a case-by-case basis. That's all I have. Once again, the promo code is second crop. It'll save you 10%. I hope it works on all their products because once again, I would fork out $180 for the video plugin, especially for video work if you're trying to get that film aesthetic. But that's all I got. This is new for me. I've not done this. Like I said, I don't take it lightly. Leave me feedback down below if I've gone too fast, if you want to see something else. I do have this, I think, for another week. Having said that, I think we can probably work out a deal with them where I get it after the fact and I can still play with it or show you some stuff with it. But that's all I have. My name is Ross. If you've liked what you've seen here, let me know. Let me have a like down there. Subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of stuff or more photo stuff. I'm going to potentially do some live sessions going over some photographer basics. I've had some people, at least in my community, reach out. They want some private lessons, etc. It's not really worth my time to do that, but I'm going to see if I can do something live where people can interact and have those questions answered in person. But that's all I have. I keep rambling. I'm done. Go Pack Go. Okay, bye.